Marie Curie is here to tell us all about her life experiences.
Thank you so much. Any in the back?
Now keep
No,
talking,
I should-
keep talking.
No, I have it on. I forgot to change it.
Can you hear me now? Thank you.
Go ahead,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you for coming. Please thank you for the lights. Oh, hi. I'm Marie Curie. You just caught me stirring up a batch of pitch blende and trying to isolate the radioactive materials out of it. Today, my spirit has come alive to tell you about my life, in which I was a wife, a mother, a tutor, a teacher, a governess, a chemist, physicist. I won 2 Nobel Prizes. I helped kickstart the nuclear age, and I broke down the barriers for women to get in higher education. If I look and sound like a man, well, that's what happens after you pass on. I was born November 7th, 1867 in Warsaw, Poland, where my name was Mania Sklodowska. I was the 5th youngest of 3 sisters and a brother. A large family. And here I am with my sisters and brother. And my dad, Władysław, was a math and physics teacher and bring home our experiments to our family. And my mom, Bronislawa, had a all-girls boarding school operating out of our house. Always someone to play with. However, tragedies occurred at age 8 when my oldest sister, Sophia, died of typhus, and at age 10 when my mom died of tuberculosis. So I've experienced throughout my life, because of this, periods of depression and became an agnostic early on. I did well in grade school, but really excelled in secondary school, which is high school. When that happened, I was a math and literature prodigy. I was best in my school. I was noted for my excellent memory and even won a gold medal prize and had my diploma here. And I wanted to go on to university, but couldn't for 2 reasons. First is money. My dad was demoted for speaking out against the harsh Italian government we were living under. And second, women weren't allowed to go to university, thinking your day Taliban. So, my sister and I, Branya, attended Flying University, which is an illegal school where we met behind closed doors on the QT in private, where us girls and young women could teach each other. And we even taught young kids how to read and write Polish and passed out books to their parents. All this was part of the resistance movement against this oppressive regime we were under, which is controlled by the Russian Empire and parts of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. If caught, we could have faced imprisonment or banished to work camps. We did this because we did this for 3.5 years because my sister and I both felt that young women can do a lot better things in life than look pretty, cook, clean, sew, and have babies. And so I was rejected because I was a woman. And that would be the key phrase in my life, because as I was a woman, this would come up over and over in my life, kind of derailing some of the things that I would do along with other women. And when I was a late teenager, then I made a pact with my sister, Branya. Said to her, we both made an agreement that I would work for 5 years and to help support her in her medical training at the University of Paris in France. And then when she got her degree, as well as a job in her field, that she would support me. So for 2 years I became a tutor but didn't make enough money. Then I became a governess to a large family, the Zoroarsky family, and had a brief romantic relationship with Kazimierz Zoroarsky. He was the oldest son, but things didn't work out. Then, at age 24, I bought a train ticket to Paris to start my educational journey at the University of Paris called Sorbonne. And I was very excited about this, threw myself into my studies because I wanted to get a degree in physics and math, and followed many famous French physicists like Gabriel Lippmann, whose work in color photography was on the cutting edge of chemistry and optics, because he would use chemicals on oil-based and later celluloid-based films, as well as optics with lenses on cameras. And during this time, I led a pretty meager life. I lived in a small attic, and it was so cold in the wintertime I had to wear all my clothes, 7 layers of clothes, just to keep warm. I existed on buttered bread and tea. Yes, I was malnourished. Yes, I even passed out. And to make ends meet, I worked in the lab cleaning glassware and would have studies with these women here. All this helped out to be able to get a master's in physics in 1893 and a degree in math in 94. What I really wanted was a teaching diploma, so I could go back to Poland, be near my family, and teach. And I had a strong sense of nationalism at this time, very close to my heart, to my country. But I didn't realize it then, but these feelings of nationalism, compounded by millions of people who would live in 12 or more different European countries, would lead to World War I and II. Then I got a fellowship to work in Lippmann's lab. And I wanted to test the magnetic qualities of various steels, as I was fascinated by invisible forces. But I needed lab space. So a physics professor of mine introduced me to Pierre Curie, who himself was a physics professor. And I'll never forget seeing him for the first time. He was way in the back of the room. He looked young, but he was 35. I was 28, 1895. And he had a grave yet confident smile and was very low, soft-spoken when he talked with a low voice. And he was famous in his own right as an internationally famous physicist because of his work with piezoelectric effect. He was a pioneer in this field. That means you take quartz crystals, squeeze them mechanically, and compress them so they produce electric current. I mean, you deform them, it wouldn't happen. Him and his brother Jacques made the electrometer capable of measuring electricity, which is a big deal in those days, and later converted to help with testing out radiation. And him and his brother Jacques also made the Curie bus law, which means that there is a correlation between temperature and magnetism, and he offered me space. Well, soon we became lab partners, soon we started dating, soon we were a couple, and in that year of 1895 he asked me to marry him. And I said, hey, thanks, but no thanks. Because I wanted to return back to my homeland and teach. So, that summer of 95, I went to Krakow University and was told directly women weren't allowed to teach. Again, because I was a woman. Okay, so we have been writing, Pierre and I, and he convinced me to come back to Paris that year, that summer, and I agreed to marry him. And he was dedicated to his dream of science and wanted to have a companion who would live his dream of science with him, and that was me. So, we had a simple civil service, and always a pragmatist. For my wedding dress, I wore a dark blue dress that I could wear in the lab. And for the money that we got from our wedding, we bought bicycles, and on our honeymoon toured the French countryside on our bikes. At this point, I was called the French name Marie, or more formally, Madame Curie. And it was a perfect melding of the minds as we were both energetic, idealistic, enthusiastic, and very, very dedicated to our science experiments and programs that we had developed. And we were both convinced that invisible forces like magnetism, gravity, electricity, and later on radiation would really shape the world, because we knew that we can only see a little bit of the electromagnetic spectrum with our eyes. That is the rainbow. We need special instruments to be able to detect, well, longer waves like infrared or radio waves. And in 1905, when Marconi developed the radio and harnessed those signals, we instantly transformed communication around the world. It was a breakthrough. But if we can understand the shorter wavelengths, like X-rays and then gamma rays, which would come out of uranium, by the way, then maybe, just maybe, well, we could harness them and help change the world. But we wouldn't know unless we tried. So, at this point, I was looking for a better PhD dissertation. I wanted to isolate some properties of various elements. So Pierre, he put his experiments on hold, and he decided to help me out. He had been making 6,000 francs a year, about $30,000 in their money, and I had this fellowship where I wasn't making anything, so we had to tutor. So I went shopping around for different ideas to do my dissertation on. And here we are working together. And I bumped into the work of Henri Becquerel, who in 1897 discovered something new with radiation. Actually, X-rays were first developed by Wilhelm Röntgen in 1895 by accident when he photographed this, he did something with his hand. But Becquerel did something unique with uranium, and it was by accident. He left a big chunk of it on his desk at night, and when he came back in the morning, well, there was a key underneath his desk in a drawer, and some photographic plates, and the shadow of the key was on these plates. So he called these invisible, yet discrete and colorless rays to be called Becquerel's rays. I changed the name to be called radioactivity. And I was first to surmise that it was because of the breakdown and decay of atoms inside uranium that these rays came out of it, because not all elements are stable. So, and I was first to start a new branch of physics called atomic physics. However, all my ideas violated the laws of thermodynamics. How is it possible that something could possibly give out energy, the negative, but not have anything coming in? Well, that's ridiculous. You need to have input and output, because all equations in chemistry must be balanced. So there was a problem. There must be something inside uranium that makes it do this. Some chemical process, some kind of unknown elements, some kind of unknown substances that we don't know anything about. So I thought this was worthy of my PhD dissertation, because it's a conundrum, a riddle to solve. So Pierre and I were able to get 1,000 pounds of pitch blende, which from the Austrian government. And pitch blende is a natural source of uranium. It contains 50 to 80% uranium. And what we did, we took hammers and just busted all these rocks up and put them in these large pots, some of them as big as mine, some of them as big as me, excuse me. And we had our assistant Andre help, and we put them in these pots, and then we pour hydrochloric acid inside them like this to break them down. And of course, we would stir and stir and stir, which is what you caught me doing when we first met, stirring all these rocks up in here. Okay, so this stirring went on for days, it went on for months, and for even some seasons. And here I am testing for radioactivity at the bottom, the residue of what the acid dissolved, with all this pitch blende in it. And I did find some traces of radioactive salts, as well as traces of radiation. Here we are both working on this. And of course, we would work together. This is us working together, doing this side by side. And here I am pouring hydrochloric acid in. Here's Pierre stirring. And at the bottom of the pot, we found some alkaline earth metals like lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium. We knew how to separate those out, as well as barium sulfate, which is white, got rid of that, and bismuth, which has iridescent crystals. Meanwhile, I was pregnant with Irene and gave birth to her. This is her. And came back to the lab later on. Here we are together, Pierre, Irene, and myself, with our daughter. And the lab we worked on was a bandage shed across from a schoolyard. It is stored dry goods like potatoes. It was drafty, dusty, and leaked when it rained, but good enough. And this is the way it looked. You know, it looks depressing when it's in black and white, doesn't it? But really, we lived in color in those days. So these are the pots that we were stirring up. And it took dedication and hard work to do all this work to isolate the materials inside the pots that we had. Here I am using Pierre's electrometer to be able to test things out. It's the contraption that he had. And we had a true partnership together. As together we were strong, together we could achieve more by working together. And this was the apparatus again used by Pierre. And after all this stirring and all of this work, we finally found a new element. So Pierre asked me, well, what do you want to call it, Marie? And I said, we're going to name it polonium. We're going to name it after Poland, because to get even with the Russians for erasing Poland from off the map. It's the only element named after a statement. Okay, so polonium is a rare earth alkaline metal. It's silvery white, but we had a minuscule amount of it, because for every 1,000 pounds of uranium, you get 40 milligrams of polonium, which means an aspirin-sized amount of it. All that work for a little bit. It has unstable isotopes, which means it has a half-life, in this case, of 138 days. And then we were thinking, well, this isn't enough. There must be something inside uranium. There must be another element, some unknown substance that we can isolate to make this what's going on here, to validate our work and our numbers. And sure enough, we found radium in December of 1899. We named it after radius, with the Latin word for rays that emanate from it. They were invisible, by the way. And radium is a silvery white alkaline earth metal, but fluoresces blue when it comes in contact with our atmosphere that is nitrogen, which constitutes 80% of it. It has to be coaxed out of a material that doesn't occur naturally. And again, we had a minuscule amount of it. We had a decigram. What's a decigram? Well, a gram is the size of your fingernail. And we had 1/10 of that. 460 grams equal a pound. And so we have like a hangnail full of it. So the amount of polonium and radium we had could easily fit into a thimble. For our work, we were awarded the Davy Medal for significant contributions to chemistry. And if you mix radium, which has a light blue hue to it, and phosphorus, you're going to get a lime green fluorescent color that would later on be turned into a paint to put on clock faces that we'll get to. For our work, we were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for the discovery of the phenomena of radiation. And I was the first female laureate to get this. And it was a three-way split. Krill got 50% of it, and rightly so for his initial pioneering work. Pierre and I each got 1/4 of it. Let me show you here we are together, Krill and us. And here I am accepting my first Nobel Prize, not all three. Here's some memorabilia behind it. Here's our names, Pierre and Marie. And the Nobel Committee had a problem with me. They had to ask Pierre what my role was. They thought I was just a pretty lab assistant, some kind of a gopher in a lab rat wannabe. And he said, oh, no way, she did half the work. It was a true modern relationship, just like yours, where each spouse pulls his or her own weight. By the way, the prize money in our day for a Nobel Prize is $1 million. In our day, it was a couple $1,000s. It's different. Money was different. So, together, with collaboration, we had teamwork, exchange ideas, inspiration. We shared and trusted each other, assisted, and supported each other. We had a true science partnership working together, and I wanted to emphasize that with you. So, we didn't cash in on the radium boom that happened later on. Actually, the price of radium got up to be $100,000 per gram, which is $2.5 million in your money If I would have done that and patented, I would have been the richest woman in America, maybe the world. But I thought it was a communal event, that's why it was for the entire world. We wanted to share it with the world. We wanted to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. You might say we were dreamers, but we weren't the only ones. Hope someday you'll join us and the world will be one. Now you got that. Okay, so in the 30s it was commercially processed. And because it was natural and it glowed, it was thought to be a health product. So it was put in creams, butter, some silly water, hand cleansing things, and a beauty aid, mainly on women's faces, because women want that special glow. And they certainly got it with that. And today, we still have this, actually, the market is billions of dollars for skincare products for women. And we still are addicted as a species and even as a society with things that glow they can hold in their hand, like gold, diamonds, and cell phones. That's our addiction. So, moving on, here I am going to first be awarded a doctorate in France. And then I was pregnant with Eve. And this is when the stuff started with me, about other men in the university. Well, I was pregnant, and they'd come up to me and they said, so you're going to keep working after your baby? I said, yeah. Who's going to take care of your kids? They said, well, I'll get caretakers to take care of them. Maybe you should be home. Maybe not. I said, I want to be here. I want to be here in the lab. So I asked these men, how come you're not home with your kids? No answer. I said, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So there's a double standard involved. It means I had to be expected to give up something that I wanted to do all my life, to do that, to be a nursemaid. Although I love my kids, but I can find someone else for them sometimes. But men don't have to. That's a double standard. Hope that goes away one day in your area. Here I am with Eve. Here I am with Irene. Same here with my daughters. Tragedy struck in April of 1906 when Pierre was crossing the street in Paris and on a rainy day and slipped and fell and was run over by a horse-drawn wagon and instantly killed. My life changed like this, over and over. Again, I had to lose what I love. I was depressed about this for the longest time. However, things brightened up a bit in May when the university opened up this teaching position as head of the physics department, and they offered it to me. I became the first head of the department, female head of the department, first to teach, first doctorate in France. And hundreds came to my lectures, and yes, I was a physics and chemistry teacher par excellence. 1906, I did my 972-page treatise on radioactivity. I explained everything about radioactivity, how they do it, the process of the chemical configurations that we were talking about, and what to do. But still, I was denied getting into the French Academy of Sciences because I was, you know the rest. So, 1911, I was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for isolating two new elements. Here I am accepting it, and here I am with the memorabilia for it. However, there's a story behind this because, once again, with the Nobel Committee, I was denied. Even though I was the first person ever to get two Nobels, and the first woman to do this also, this wouldn't be done until Linus Pauling in the 60s, to get two Nobels in two different fields. I still had a problem with them because I was causing a scandal. I had a romantic relationship with Paul Langman in my lab, and he was a married man. He had been estranged from his wife for a long time. And I had been, Pierre had been dead for over 5 years. And Nobel Prize Committee didn't like that because his estranged wife, she sent letters in to a tabloid newspaper, or love letters, and they were published. So I had to deal with shame and scandal, but I had to keep going. It's only my friend Albert Einstein convinced me to go to get my Nobel Prize. So I had to fight sexism because a married man can get involved with a woman, and there's or another married woman or a single woman, and there's no real problem. But a widow or a woman trying to be involved with a married man was a different story. A double standard again. But I survived this one. Went to the Soloway Conference in Brussels in the 20s, and of course, with all these physicists here, including Einstein and Max Planck, I was the only woman. But that's fine. I got along with these guys real well, and with Einstein too, who especially liked me because I was the only one that fame had not corrupted. Because I had the 3 Ds: discipline, desire, and dedication, and a lot of integrity. And I was able to be with them in their own field. You've heard that expression, where women have to work twice as hard? Not with me. They accepted me for my ideas. Maybe in some of the other areas of society that might be true, but not with me. So in 1914, I opened up the Radium Institute and named it after Pierre. And myself, Irene, my daughter, and the other former students of mine, here I am here, would work there. Radium had the ability to send rays that would penetrate the skin and then put on a photographic plate with electric charge would produce a picture. And X-rays revolutionized the way we saw inside the body. It could even detect tumors. It was life-saving and game-changing. But all this had to be put on hold in 1916 when World War I broke out. So I stashed all my radium in a bank vault, tried to cash in a Nobel Prize gold medal, but the bank wouldn't take it to help France out. And Irene and I and staff trained 150 nurses. And what we would do was we had 220 small handheld X-ray machines made, and they were portable. And we were able to take, these were called little Curies or petite Curies, little handheld machines. And we were able to take nurses, put them in an ambulance, take them to MASH units, which are mobile Army surgical hospitals, near just off the front line, and hook the machine up to the battery in the car, get an electrical charge, and take a picture of where shrapnel or bullets went inside a soldier. This was a life-changing and game-saving thing for these soldiers because it would save lives. And all the other battlefield maladies like this. This is how this worked. Here we are visiting in Belgium, kind of like a modern-day Florence Nightingale, myself and Irene, a hospital in Belgium, which is where a lot of the action was. Here's Irene driving an ambulance herself and working in one. And we also, here we are together, and here we are, we developed, or was at the time being used, radon syringes, which means we thought this would help sterilize wounds. Uranium turns to radium, which turns to radon gas, which is actually part of our atmosphere. We thought that would help. Here, this is what this really looked like when it was going on, these pop-up tents, very reminiscent of NFL games when someone has concussion protocol, and take it right there. You guys can relate to this. Right there in the field. And here it is, handheld. These were the ambulances that were formed, specially made, radiology. Here I am driving one. And there were 2 famous ambulance drivers, American ones, that were underage that drove. One was Ernest Hemingway, who wrote Farewell to Arms. Another one was Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's. Both boys were from Oak Park, Illinois. So, 20s in the Radium Institute, but then I realized, here I am with Irene, I realized I really had to make money. This is the sole thing about what you're doing. You gotta have, we had to have contributions come in. So I went on the lecture circuit in Europe to make money. And then we were invited to America. So myself, Irene, my sister Branya, went on the ship Olympia in May of 21 and went to New York City. Then we took a train to see President Harding because he had a gift for us, gift of $50,000 in cash for us to buy radium. Here I am with Harding. Here we are together at a White House ceremony. Very kind of him. I spent 6 weeks in America, and I would be wined and dined and had galas, especially on the East Coast, Philadelphia, Boston, New York. And because they loved me. It was at the height of my career in 1922. Here's Irene in the lab. And I didn't realize it then, but I had sores on my fingers and hands and felt fatigue. What I didn't realize was I really had radiation sickness because it affected the marrow inside my bones. But I didn't know it then because the type of gamma rays that come out of uranium can go right through paper, right through the human body, right through aluminum, but it's stopped by lead. Who would ever think that, well, a rock like this would emanate rays from it that could hurt somebody? We had no idea this was even possible, that this was happening. Well, my dad used to bring home these kind of rocks, special crystals that were different colors, purple, green, red. They were just beautiful. They didn't harm us. How could this possibly occur? Well, after all, I kept radium on me in my pocket, my lab coat pocket, carried around it with me. I even had some on my desk, my nightstand, to see the clock. And as well as I'm working with barium and bismuth, this is what was going on with me then. In the 30s, well, actually in the late 20s and 30s, I got another, a whole bunch of, actually about $50,000 again, worth this time of the actual material from President Hoover. And over time in the 1930s, radium would be very commercially processed because of the discovery of the neutron with James Chadwick. So in other words, that uranium-235 would be isolated, which is the most powerful of the uranium isotopes, and then it would be used, lasers would be used with it, and we have 2,000 tons of it that would be used in nuclear reactors. So our area, our pavilion, would be the center of nuclear research, ushering the nuclear age because of our work. My daughter, Irene, married my lab assistant, Frederick Joliet. Together in 1935, they discovered the Nobel Prize. They isolated various materials to get the Nobel Prize in chemistry, pardon me. And so here I am with my daughter, Irene, and my son-in-law. Here's my grandson, Pierre, who would become a noted biologist, and his sister, Helena, would become a nuclear physicist. So I was Irene's role model. Of course, I was a perfect role model for this. But I wanted to go back to the slide from before. You'll notice that my son-in-law and my daughter didn't live to age 60. That's because they died of radiation sickness. So us Curies can get Nobel Prizes, 3 of them, dedicate our life to science, literally gave our bodies to science in a way. So, talking about the Radium Institute in Warsaw, my sister Brania headed this up. However, this had to be put on hold when the Nazis invaded Poland, and after World War II, it became another center for research. As long as we called this, Curie, and I was involved in the International Committee of Intellectual Cooperation, and I had a Curie Foundation that would give money to be able to process more radiological experimentation. My daughter Eve wrote a book about me, Madame Curie. Here I am getting older and older. And I wanted to tell you about a little story here. It's a stereotype that women had in our day, maybe even in your day. The women were fragile, they were frail, that they were too emotional and they couldn't handle stress. So therefore women were put in the background. Oh, like clerical work, like teachers, nurses, caretakers, and the like, all in the shadows of men. And I could relate to what was going on with other women in the field too, like with Maria Montessori, who lived in the who went to school at the same time I did in the 1890s. And she wanted to be a doctor. So she was involved with all these men. All these men were doctors. When it came time to dissect corpses, she had to do it alone because it wasn't proper for a woman to be in front of a nude, dead body. She got a degree in medicine, and then she got a degree in education. And then she found a new way called the Montessori method of how to teach children. And today there are 15,000 schools, $1 billion enterprise because of what she did in the pioneering work. She dared to take on the establishment. Or the Harvard computers. These are women that worked for the Harvard observation observatories. And they were hired at 25 cents to 50 cents an hour, half as what a man would do, to research where stars were on photographic plates. Up to 400,000 stars, and their job was to categorize them and to number crunch to get better numbers. And indeed they did. Their work for categorizing stars still exists today, and that's how we categorize stars right now. Our star is a G-type star, main sequence, yellow dwarf. They also found C-feed variables, that is stars that dim and brighten over a period of months or years to be used as cosmic yardsticks. They also found out about different types of galaxies, spiral, barbed, elliptical, and globular clusters. All this helped out Edwin Hubble make his famous Hubble's constant, or Hubble's law. That means the further away a galaxy is, or redshifted from us, the faster it's receding from us, or explains inflation or expansion of the universe. These women were the backup behind the man. Or the radium girls. There are about 80 or 90 of them in the Northeast who were in factories, and they hand-painted on clock dials with radium paint on numbers and the hands on clocks. And of course, to make their brushes taut, they dipped them in their mouth. And of course, they got radiation sickness and deformities like this. And then they're the first women, black women, to work for NASA. And indeed, they made a difference in the early 60s. Dorothy Vaughan was really good with computers. They were twice the size of this room. She was so good with it, they named a building after it, became a supervisor. Mary Jackson was the first woman to design the Gemini and Mercury spacecraft. And Katherine Johnson was so good at her calculations that John Glenn would not go into space without her calculations. He didn't even care about the administrators. He said, I want her numbers. And why? Because when you're going 17,000 miles per hour around the Earth, and you have to come inside Earth's atmosphere, you have to come in at the correct angle. If you don't, you'll bounce off and forever go around the Earth, or you'll burn up at over 5,000 degrees. So that's why he trusted her so much. And we all know about discrimination, yada yada. But what about the restrooms for these women? Well, they were 400 yards away, all detailed in a movie called Hidden Figures. Thought I'd tell you about women that made a difference in this. And then, believe it or not, of all people in the world, Joan Jett I want to talk about. She was rejected by 23 different record companies to make her music, to make an album, because all of them were run by men. Thank you. So she decided, hell with that. I'll just do Blackheart Records, make my own. And now she's sold almost 3 million albums. She did it on her own, and that's the way to do it. Out here in the villages, things are run by a lot of middle-aged, frumpy bureaucrats. And women are put off on the sidelines. And they're actually used as window dressing. There's a course you could take here called Madams in American History of years back here in the villages. And in it it showed how madams or owners of brothels could be owners of businesses and successful entrepreneurs. But as we all know, prostitution is human trafficking and consensual rape. And in the age of the Me Too movement, this is not appropriate. We can do better things out here than have couples come out here and giggle at what prostitutes do. Okay, enough of the soapbox. Here I am here. I died in July of 1934 at age 66 from aplastic anemia, which is a form of leukemia. I couldn't produce iron in my blood cells in the marrow of my bones at all. And uncontrollable bleeding. Here I am interred along with Pierre at the Pantheon in Paris. But our tomb is lined with 1 inch of lead because it has a half-life of 1,000, radium has a half-life of 1,790 years. So that's why no one can really get inside this. All our papers, equipment, apparatuses and everything are also radioactive. But who would come here? Do you remember Casimir's? Yeah, he came here once a week and would think of all the things that could have been. They named things after me. Curie, an element, shown here. There's been 6 movies made after me, one in 43 called Madame Curie, which is what you saw some of the stills from, as well as Radioactive in 2019, Hollywood film, and then a French film called Marie Curie. There's been 3 other independent films about me also. You can buy dresses like me. Kids can, when they put on skits at school. You buy them on the net, online, and t-shirts and mugs about me. All the money goes to the Curie Foundation. I'm on 600 postage stamps. Yes, from everywhere from Senegal to Panama. And I like this one, especially from India, because it shows the imaging that now you guys do, and now has been used on everyone in this room. Like medical imaging, for instance. I won 15 gold medals for my work. I won 19 honorary degrees from University of Chicago, Wesleyan, and Yale. I'm on commemorative coins. I'm on real coins when Europe had coins. I'm on money. There have been 94 books written about me, mainly biographies. There's been a play by actor Alan Alda, called Radiance. I'm a popular subject in plays and movies. Why? Because nowadays people want to see something about women who are strong, who are independent, and are awful to have smart. That's why I have things like this about. There are 8 hospitals and medical centers named after me, a dozen schools. My name is on 16 different streets throughout the world. There are 5 town squares, a asteroid, a nuclear reactor, a park, a bridge, and other plays like this, showing exactly what I did. You recognize this. And then I made some elements just for the villages. I found some just for it. Really, it's true. Like phenium, and no matter how you try to find this element, it's always an hour away and a pain in the butt to get to. No matter where you go, it's always an hour away. And also, a new element called brown woodium. If you place this element near something, like anywhere where there's people, there's no life on it past 8:30 at night. And then I also found roundaboutium. These are 2 minerals found in the center of roundabouts. You always wonder what's in the center? It's roundaboutium. And if you have these minerals, that means you excessively play pickleball and golf, look for discount coupons, have dinner at 4 o'clock, and go to bed at 8 o'clock. Okay, so I was the first woman to obtain a degree in physics, first woman to graduate in France, first woman to obtain a Nobel Prize, first woman to obtain a chair at Sorbonne, first scientist to obtain 2 Nobel Prizes. So who was Vanya Curie? Well, that's me. I kickstarted the atomic age, and just as importantly, I broke open the glass ceilings for women to get involved. And that means if you have the chance, do the dance and find romance in what you have. And show your passion with your fashion. Thank you very much. That is it.